Welcome to the Run Your Day podcast, a show dedicated to helping you expand your capacity, take your life in every area to an entirely new level, and creating a day and a life by design. Here's your host, Dan Hafner. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Run Your Day podcast. As always, your host, Dan Hafner here. Today's topic is this: the unconscious directions we take. As always, I appreciate you all joining. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. All right, everyone. So I'm going to share with you a story. Let me tell you what, it's some shenanigans. It's some freaking shenanigans, and it's my life. So, but I think there's a really, really profound lesson in here. So, a little bit of a backstory. My wife and I are working on closing our pool. We just moved into a new house here it was about a month ago, a little over a month ago, 5 weeks ago or so. And we have a pool, and since it's the fall time, we never really got to enjoy it, which sucks. But we're working on closing it, and I say working on it because it should only take like a day. But I've never had a pool before, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm really having a tough time with it, but I'm getting there. So we're making progress. We should be able to have it done today. But yesterday we were working on the draining part of it. Now, some of you might be like, "Oh, you don't need to drain the pool." Whatever, just let me do my thing, right? So the guy that had sold us the house said he always drains it down below the skimmer and all this different stuff. So I'm working on draining it, and it was taking a lot longer than I thought because we were trying to do it with just like the gravity, and our house is completely flat and our yard's flat, so it was kind of tough to figure out. But I got it going, and the only thing was we had this hose that wouldn't really reach like the woods behind our house, so it was just kind of water going out into our yard, which I said it's flat, right? It doesn't really run downhill, which really wasn't a big deal. I don't really care. It's not like anything's back there or anything. But what I was doing, we were starting to get hungry because it was taking so long. So we're like, all right, we're just going to grill up some hot dogs or hamburgers or something for dinner. So I was running back and forth between our back patio where I was grilling hot dogs, and then also trying to make sure that the drain was still going okay. And like, cause it was leaking at the pool, and it wasn't like, I was making sure it was spreading out the hose so the water wasn't collecting all in one spot, and like just trying to like make sure it was going all right. Right. So anyway, as I'm running back and forth between grilling hot dogs and managing this shenanigans of our pool closing, right? There's basically that we have like this L-shaped patio, and I was walking back from the back of the pool and going back between the patio, and there's like a table and like this tree there, and I'm like dipping and ducking and like getting through, and I'm like, oh man, like this is a tight squeeze, right? And I did that trip twice to go back to the grill. And then I would go back that same way, and I'd go back the same way. And I'm like dipping and diving and dodging, and, the 5 Ds of dodgeball, right? And the third time I'm walking back, and I look up and I'm like, wow, Dan, you're a dumbass. Like there's literally a path right through our garden that I could just take one step inside of there and get right to the grill. And there's literally a stepping stone right there. Like literally a stepping stone right there. And I looked at it and I'm like, why in the hell was I walking that really stupid long way, going through like this, avoiding this chair and this tree and these branches and getting my face scraped, and like, what? Like, I couldn't figure out. I did it twice. I didn't just do it once. I did it twice. Right. And I'm sitting here, I'm just standing there, and it just stopped me dead in my tracks. I'm standing there in the yard, and I'm like, huh, why didn't I see that? Like it boggled my mind, right? And that's when this thought came to my mind, was that we have these unconscious directions and these patterns that we follow, right? Like you probably take the same way to work every single day without thinking about it, right? Like you probably, when you get to work and you sit down in your chair or like whatever you do at work, right? You probably aren't even thinking about your drive there. You probably wouldn't even remember if I quizzed you and I said, "Hey, did you see the deer in the field that you passed like down the street, or did you see the big yellow truck that you passed with the people waving Trump flags out of the back or something?" Like you probably wouldn't even see it, right? Like even if it was standing out there crazy, like you know what I mean? Like it's just it's crazy how we fall into these patterns and these really not even subconscious, just unconscious patterns of behavior and direction and stories, right? And it was just like me because I realized why I was doing that, right? I was walking with my head down. I was watching my feet as I walked because I was just thinking. I was lost in thought. I was thinking about other things. That's just, I wasn't walking looking forward, which is another lesson in itself, right? Always keep your eyes up when you're walking forward. Um, but it just struck me as so powerful, right? Because like even you can do this inside of relationships. Like a lot of people do this inside of relationships, right? Like you see someone that ends up with the same person over and over, or maybe this is you, right? And you're always just like, well, she always goes for those dickheads, right? And that's an unconscious pattern of behavior. Now, there's probably a lot more to it inside of a relationship, right? But it's it's crazy. Like I noticed this with myself as well. Like at least when we used to live in West Virginia, was like when I would go for a run or I would go to the gym, especially on a run, like I would run the same route all the time. Like I didn't even think about where I was going. Like if I was just like, oh, I'm gonna go for a 4 mile run, like it would just be the same route every time. And I can actually verify. I go back and look at like my Strava account and like look and see like, oh yeah, definitely ran the same route over and over and over, right? And I think we do this because it's comfortable, right? Like we do this because obviously like the status quo in our lives doesn't want us to challenge ourselves. We don't want to we don't want to get uncomfortable. We want to stay like inside of what is comfortable. And we want to stay inside of like what's known. Because when we go outside of that, it's scary, it's different, it's weird, right? Because I could like just like the example of me walking through my backyard and going through the weird L-shaped way and dipping and diving around the tree. I could have gone through the garden and it turned out there was literally a stepping stone right there for probably that exact purpose. Right? So even if you start to look at it from a distance, you're like, "Oh, I can't really do that." You finally learn to pick your head up and see where you're going and actually be conscious and present with things. You might be like, "Well, I don't know if this will work out. This is kind of scary," right? And then you might find that there's a stepping stone right there for you, and that was the way you were always meant to go, right? So there's so many there's so many different applications to this, and I could sit here all day giving you examples and parables and all this different stuff, but instead I'll just ask you this question, right? Like, where in your life, after listening to what I just said, where in your life do you notice unconscious patterns of behavior, right? Like where do you notice it? Do you notice it in your eating? Do you notice it inside of a particular task you do at work, or like I said, your commute to work? A particular task that you do inside of your home, or a way that you treat a loved one, right? Like there's probably a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways. I just told you about mine, right? My fitness, my way I walk around, even, right? Because we all have these unconscious patterns of behavior that are inevitable, right? Like you're never going to get rid of these. But when you come to be present with them and you come to recognize them, that's when you can actually make that shift and make that change and actually be like, okay, you know what? That's not what I want. I need to actually be more conscious inside of that. And you can change this up, right? Like inside of a commute, you can maybe you don't listen to audiobooks. Maybe try listening to an audiobook or try just doing a talk with yourself. A lot of people think it's weird. I've talked about this on the show before. Like I just talk to myself a lot. Like I'll be walking down the street, just talking to myself, walking our dogs, just talking out loud to myself. Like I'm actually having a conversation. Yeah, you might think it's weird, but I have more profound insights and revelations and actions that come out of that than anything else I do, like bar none, right? But it's an unconscious thing that I do, but I also started to be conscious about doing that, if that makes sense. So that is all I have for you guys today. But I want you to think about this. Like where in your life are there unconscious patterns of behaviors that you are doing and that you can now be aware of? And then what can you do to start breaking out of those? Okay. So that is all I have for you guys again today. As always, I appreciate you all joining. Hey, go over and if you're on TikTok, follow me on TikTok at Dan Hafner Run Your Day. Putting up some videos, some excerpts of the show. You can actually see me doing the show some days. I take a video while I'm doing the podcast and I post it on there. So follow me on TikTok, my friends. It'll be fun. It'll be good times. All right, everyone. That is all I have for you. Dan Hafner signing off. Make it a great rest of your day. Hey, have you ever thought about joining a virtual run challenge? As COVID-19 continues to upend our lives and change our life routines, finding fresh ways to challenge yourself physically can be difficult. I know I'm having trouble with that. It can also be pretty hard to connect with others and find accountability partners for the purpose of fitness as well. That's why we created Runwage Virtual Challenges. Runwage Challenges are a new and exciting way to stay physically active and maintain social distancing. Every challenge takes place 100% online, and you can compete against and engage with runners from all over the world. Best of all, they are the only virtual challenges out there which actually reward participants with real cash. That means you have no excuse for staying inactive during this pandemic. So if you've been looking for a fresh and interesting way to stay active and get your miles in, go to runwageapp.com/virtual challenges to join me and the diverse community of runners already competing. That's runwageapp.com/virtual challenges. Can't wait to see you there.